My parent erased me from the family on their anniversary, so I built a life without them. But what I did next shook their perfect image. I'm a 28-year-old man, and my younger sister Lisa is 26 years old. For as long as I can remember, Lisa was the golden child. My parents treated her like she could do no wrong, while I was more like an accessory to the family, useful when needed, ignored the rest of the time. It wasn't outright neglect, but it was clear where their priorities lay. Growing up, Lisa got everything handed to her: expensive birthday parties, the best clothes, private tutoring. Meanwhile, I had to fight for attention. If I got a B+ on a test, my parents barely acknowledged it. Lisa got a participation trophy in dance class. They acted like she had won an Olympic gold medal. When she turned 16, my parents bought her a brand new car. I had to save up for a used one by working part-time jobs. College? They covered every cent of Lisa's tuition, gave her an allowance, and even bought her an apartment to live in. I took out student loans, worked shifts at a grocery store, and had to scrape by. It wasn't a sudden realization that I was second place in my own family. It was a slow burn. By the time I graduated college, I had already started distancing myself. Not a dramatic no-contact situation, just a gradual pulling away. I still showed up for major holidays, responded to texts, and kept things cordial. I wasn't expecting a loving relationship with my parents, but I figured we had some level of basic family respect. Turns out, I was dead wrong. A few weeks before their anniversary, I started noticing a shift. My parents, who had always kept up some level of forced politeness, suddenly stopped responding to my texts. When I visited for a family dinner, the atmosphere was colder than usual. Lisa, on the other hand, was practically glowing with self-satisfaction. It felt like they had already made up their minds about something. Maybe they wanted to reconnect, I thought. Maybe this was a step towards something better. I showed up dressed for the occasion, made small talk with relatives, and sat through the usual speeches about love and commitment. Everything seemed normal, until my dad took the mic. There had been signs, subtle at first, that something was off. In the past few months, my parents had grown increasingly cold toward me. My calls went unanswered more often. My visits felt unwanted. There were awkward silences at family gatherings where Lisa thrived in the spotlight, while I faded into the background. He thanked everyone for coming, went on about his love for my mom, and then, completely out of nowhere, said, "And for our final gift to each other, we've decided to move forward as a family of 3. At first, I didn't even register what he meant. My brain tried to rationalize it. A family of 3? Maybe he meant something metaphorical, a joke. But then I looked around. My mom was nodding, smiling. Lisa was smirking. A few relatives looked confused, while others awkwardly chuckled, thinking it was some weird inside joke. Then my dad kept talking. He explained that since I had been distancing myself, they decided to make it official. Emotionally, financially, legally. They had updated their wills. I was completely removed. Lisa now had full power of attorney over them. I wasn't their son anymore, at least not in any way that mattered. At first there was stunned silence, a few chuckles from distant relatives thinking it was some kind of joke. Then the confusion set in. My aunt leaned over to my uncle, whispering, "Did he just say what I think he said?" I asked, "So, this whole dinner was just to humiliate me?" My dad, without hesitation, just shrugged and said, "It was just time to make things official." Lisa was still smirking like she had just won some twisted game. That was the moment I realized she had known all along. She hadn't just accepted their decision, she had probably encouraged it. Some relatives looked horrified. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure whether to say something or pretend this wasn't happening. I didn't wait around to see how the rest of the night played out. I stood up, left my half-eaten plate of food on the table, and walked out without another word. No one followed me. No one tried to stop me. The next morning, I woke up to a single email from my parents. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an attempt to explain or make things right. It was just a cold confirmation: this isn't a joke. Please don't reach out again. And just like that, I was out of the family. After walking out of that anniversary dinner, I expected some kind of follow-up, maybe a half-hearted attempt to justify what happened, maybe some extended family reaching out in confusion. What I didn't expect was how quickly things escalated. The night after the dinner, I told a couple of close friends what had happened. Their reactions ranged from disbelief to outright anger. One of them, after a long silence, just shook his head and said, "They really treated you like an ex they wanted to ghost." Another joked, "Damn, you didn't just get disowned. You got publicly fired from being their kid." Hearing it said out loud made it even more ridiculous. A couple of my friends tried to make sense of it, suggesting maybe it was some kind of twisted test to get me to chase after them. but I wasn't interested in playing that game. By the next morning, my phone was blowing up, not from my parents, but from extended relatives. A few aunts and uncles reached out, acting like this was just a heat-of-the-moment decision. You know how your parents are. Give them some time. They'll come around. They probably didn't mean it like that. One uncle even tried to spin it as a joke gone wrong. Maybe they thought it was funny. But the ones who had actually been there knew better. A few messaged just to say they were horrified by what they had witnessed. Others admitted they had no idea how to even look my parents in the eye after that. A few hours later, Lisa posted on social media, "Happy anniversary to the best parents in the world. Excited for our future as a family." No mention of me, no context, just a declaration that their little trio was now officially complete. That was when I realized this wasn't just about inheritance or favoritism. It was about control. They wanted to erase me, pretend I had never been there in the first place. I texted Lisa directly, not even to argue, just to confirm what I already knew. She didn't deny knowing in advance. She didn't even pretend to feel bad. Instead, she doubled down. They finally did what they should have done years ago. No hesitation, no regret, just pure satisfaction. She went on to explain herself as if I had asked. According to her, I had been selfish for not being more involved in our parents' lives. I should have called them more, visited more, been grateful for everything they had done. Apparently, in her mind, I had distanced myself first, so they were just making it official. The fact that they had given her everything and left me to figure things out on my own never seemed to cross her mind. A week later, the legal paperwork arrived. They hadn't been bluffing. The documents confirmed I had been removed from their will. Lisa was now the sole inheritor. She had power of attorney over them, full control over their finances and medical decisions. If anything happened, they hadn't just cut me out emotionally, they had gone all the way. A few days after that, my mom sent a long, dramatic text. She wrote about how they had tried with me, but that I was always distant. She talked about how Lisa had always been the one who truly appreciated them. Then, the kicker, "Maybe we should have done this sooner. You were never really one of us." That was the last message I ever read from her. My dad, on the other hand, sent exactly one email, "No hard feelings. This is just what's best for the family." That was it. That was all he had to say after 28 years. My mom's parents, who had always been the most reasonable in the family, lost it. They called my parents out in the family group chat, demanding to know what the hell was wrong with them. They didn't get a response. Instead, my parents left the group entirely. After that, I blocked them and Lisa on everything: phone, email, social media. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for them to twist the knife any further. Their reaction? Silence. I expected them to lash out, try to guilt me into some kind of response, but nothing happened. They didn't try to argue, didn't try to justify themselves. It was like they had just deleted me from their lives and moved on. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of trying to win their approval. I threw myself into work, started focusing on my own life without the stress of my parents' favoritism hanging over me, and it felt good. That peace lasted about a week before Lisa sent one last message. "Just wanted to let you know how peaceful things are without your negativity." I didn't reply. This wasn't about money or inheritance. They weren't just cutting me out, they were rewriting history, pretending I had never been there to begin with. And I had no intention of giving them the satisfaction of proving them wrong. A few weeks passed, and while I had completely moved on, my parents' perfect little plan wasn't working out the way they had expected. Cutting me off wasn't giving them peace. It was causing a domino effect they never saw coming. My mom's parents wasted no time in making their stance clear. After calling my parents out in the family group chat, they went a step further. They cut contact completely. My grandfather, who rarely got involved in family drama, made it clear to everyone, "If you can disown your own son over nothing, you are no family of mine." That one stung. My mom had always prided herself on being the good daughter, constantly trying to outshine her siblings. Now, her own parents wanted nothing to do with her. It didn't take long for other family members to start pulling away. The aunts and uncles who had initially tried to defend my parents started realizing just how deep their toxicity ran. There were no dramatic confrontations, no heated arguments, just silence, fewer invites, less interaction, and an obvious shift in the family dynamic. Some of my cousins, who had always been neutral, stopped responding to Lisa's texts. Others straight up unfollowed her and my parents on social media. Now that I was gone, Lisa was finally experiencing what it meant to be an only child. Without me as a buffer, every little inconvenience fell on her shoulders. She started making small complaints in the family group chat. Nothing major at first, just passive-aggressive remarks about being so busy lately and having to handle everything on her own. No one was rushing to sympathize. My parents had always leaned on Lisa emotionally, but now, without me, she was their only outlet. Every minor inconvenience, Lisa had to handle it. Medical appointments? Lisa had to drive them. House maintenance? Lisa had to call the repairman and handle the costs. They started treating her like their personal assistant instead of their daughter. And Lisa, who had been so smug about finally being the only child, was realizing that being the favorite didn't mean being loved, it meant being used. At first, she tried subtle hints. She brought up in casual conversations with relatives how tough it was managing everything by herself, how she wished she had a little more support. The response, a series of light but firm refusals. No one was going to step in and fix the mess my parents had created. My parents had always assumed I'd eventually contribute financially as they got older. Now that I was gone, that plan fell apart fast. Lisa was doing well for herself, but she didn't have the financial stability to cover everything they suddenly expected from her. They started hinting at small contributions she could make, extra groceries, covering bills, helping with house repairs. At first, Lisa agreed, thinking it was temporary. But then, the requests started getting bigger. Out of nowhere, I got a text from Lisa, "Hope you're doing well." That was it. No context, no follow-up. I ignored it. Word spread fast. Extended family members who weren't even at the anniversary dinner heard about what my parents had done. Suddenly, they weren't being invited to as many events. People stopped asking them for advice or including them in family plans. It was subtle but noticeable. A few months later, there was a big family gathering, one of those events where everyone usually showed up. This time, my parents weren't invited. For the first time, a major event happened without them, and the atmosphere was noticeably more peaceful. No backhanded comments, no tense conversations, just family enjoying each other's company. A week after the family gathering, my dad tried reaching out, not to me, but to an uncle. He said they might have been too harsh and hinted that they wanted to reconnect. The response, "You made your choice. Own it." My parents made one last attempt to get back in my grandparents' good graces. They called, they sent long emails. My mom even tried to guilt trip them about respecting your daughter. Nothing worked. My grandparents had already decided they weren't entertaining the manipulation. By this point, Lisa was crumbling under the weight of everything they were throwing at her. She started venting to friends about how exhausting it was, dealing with them alone. Her frustration wasn't just about the work, it was about realizing she was never their favorite because they loved her more. She was their favorite because she was easier to control. While all of this was unfolding, I was doing better than ever. Without their toxicity hanging over me, I was excelling at work. I was spending more time with people who actually cared about me. For the first time in my life, I was free. Then, out of nowhere, my mom reached out. It wasn't an apology, it wasn't regret. It was a desperate attempt to pull me back in. "We've been thinking a lot lately. Maybe we acted too fast. Maybe it's time to reconsider being part of the family again." There was no sorry, no acknowledgement of what they did, just an expectation that I'd fall in line. I didn't even finish reading it. I deleted the email. Their plan had officially backfired. Lisa had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, but now that I was gone, she was starting to understand what that actually meant without me in the picture. There was no one else to take the heat, no one to deflect the constant demands, and no one to absorb the pressure my parents had been piling on me for years. Word got back to me through my grandparents. Lisa was already complaining, not directly to my parents, of course, but to her friends and some extended family. She had started making little comments about how exhausting it was dealing with everything alone, how she felt like she had no personal time, how she was always running around handling things for them. At first, no one reacted much. She had spent years playing the favorite, rubbing in how she was so much closer to them than I was. But now that she had exactly what she wanted, the sympathy wasn't rolling in the way she expected. My parents weren't wasting any time increasing their expectations either. Without me as an option, Lisa was their only emotional and financial crutch. If my mom wanted something from the store, Lisa was expected to get it that day. If my dad needed something fixed, Lisa had to figure it out. They didn't ask, they just assumed. Lisa had a demanding job, but that didn't matter to them. If she mentioned a big work project, my mom would immediately guilt trip her into prioritizing family first. If she tried setting a boundary, my dad would go silent, pulling his usual disappointed routine until she caved. It wasn't just family who noticed the shift. Lisa's friends started seeing how overwhelmed she was. She used to be the one who had all the time in the world for brunches, shopping, and casual get-togethers. Now she was canceling plans at the last minute, always too busy dealing with something for my parents. Some of those same friends, ones who had always believed Lisa's version of events, began questioning things. A few even asked if maybe my parents had treated me the same way all these years. Then, out of nowhere, Lisa messaged me, "I know we've had our differences, but can we talk?" I ignored it. If she had something to say, she could say it to the people she had been so eager to replace me with. Meanwhile, my parents had fully embraced treating Lisa like their personal assistant. It wasn't just about errands anymore. My mom expected Lisa to sit with her for hours, entertaining her because she was lonely. My dad started sending her long lists of things he wanted her to handle, from banking to scheduling appointments. If Lisa pushed back, they'd act offended. My grandparents, seeing how everything was unfolding, finally decided they'd had enough. They cut off the small amount of financial help they had been giving my parents. Nothing huge, just occasional assistance with bills or unexpected expenses. But now, that was gone too. My grandparents made it clear, you had 2 kids, you chose to disown one. That means you get half the support you used to have. Lisa had been handling their demands for months, but they were relentless. At first she thought she could manage it, run an errand here, cover a small expense there, but the requests never stopped. When she hinted that she was feeling overwhelmed, my mom dismissed it with a casual, "You'll manage. You always do." She had planned this trip for months, and it was important for her career, but to them that didn't matter. She pushed back. They didn't like that. Instead of backing off, they pulled their usual move, the same one they had used on me for years. They told Lisa, "If you don't act like family, maybe we made a mistake choosing you." That was it. That was the moment it finally clicked for her. Their love had never been unconditional. She hadn't been chosen because they loved her more. She had been chosen because she was the one who bent to their will. Now that she wasn't bending the way they wanted, they were dangling the same thread over her that they had used on me. She wasn't the golden child. She was just the next in line. Lisa had spent her entire life believing she was the chosen one, the golden child who could do no wrong. Now, with no one left to share the weight, she was realizing what that title actually meant. And for the first time, she wasn't just complaining about it, she was fighting back. It started small. She stopped answering their calls immediately. She waited hours, sometimes even a full day, before responding. Then she started setting boundaries. She told them she wouldn't drop everything for errands, that they needed to schedule things in advance if they wanted her help. She refused to cancel another work event just because my mom needed her to be around. My parents didn't take it well. My mom had a full meltdown, the kind she used to have with me when I tried pushing back. Lisa was accused of being ungrateful. "After everything we've done for you," she was reminded that they had chosen her, that they had trusted her, and now she was betraying them. My dad didn't yell. He never did. Instead, he pulled out his usual weapon, silence. Long, heavy silences followed by disappointed stares. The kind designed to make Lisa feel like she had done something horribly wrong. The same routine I had gone through growing up, the one that had worked on me for years. But Lisa wasn't handling it the way they expected. The stress was eating her alive. She was snapping at coworkers, missing deadlines, constantly looking exhausted. The same people who had once envied how close she was with our parents were now watching her fall apart. Her boss took notice. So did her friends. People started seeing that this wasn't just normal family drama. Lisa was being drained. And it wasn't just her work life that was suffering. Extended family, the same ones who had originally tried to excuse my parents' behavior, were starting to notice the cracks. At first, it was small comments at family gatherings. "Lisa looks tired all the time. They expect too much from her. No wonder he left." Lisa must have felt it too, because she reached out to me again. This time, she didn't try to act casual. She admitted it. "I see everything now, and I'm sorry for how I treated you." I ignored it. A few days later, my grandparents had enough. They sat Lisa down and told her the truth. The same thing I had been trying to tell her for years. This is exactly what he went through. They didn't sugarcoat it. They laid it all out. How I had spent my childhood being the backup plan, the invisible son, how they had ignored me, pushed all their attention onto her, and how the moment I stopped bending to their will, they threw me away like I never existed. They warned her, if she didn't get out now, the same thing was going to happen to her. Lisa must have been stewing over that conversation for weeks. She started answering their calls less, delaying responses to their texts. At the next family gathering, the tension had already been building for too long. It started as another argument. My mom was nagging Lisa for not doing enough, not spending enough time with them, not acting like family. Lisa was already frustrated, already drained, and when my dad hit her with the same disappointed silence, something inside her snapped. In front of the entire family, she yelled the words no one had ever dared to say to them before, "You ruined my life." The room went silent. My parents looked like they had been slapped. Lisa wasn't done. She let it all out, how they had used her, how they'd expected her to give up everything for them, how they had thrown away their own son over nothing. Every single thing she had denied before, everything she had excused, she was now screaming at them in front of everyone. My mom tried to argue. My dad tried to shame her into silence. But it was too late. The damage was done. The illusion was shattered. And for the first time, everyone saw them for what they really were. The relatives who had once defended them, they weren't defending them anymore. The people who had laughed off what happened to me, they weren't laughing now. The perfect family my parents had built, the one where I never existed, had finally fallen apart, and there was nothing they could do to put it back together. Lisa had always been their favorite, the daughter who could do no wrong. But after that public explosion at the family gathering, she wasn't their golden child anymore. She was just the next problem to deal with. And now, she was realizing exactly how disposable she really was. For the first time in her life, Lisa started pulling away. She stopped answering their calls right away, started delaying responses to their texts. When my mom asked her to drive over for something urgent, Lisa told her she was busy. When my dad sent her a long list of errands, she only did half. It wasn't full no contact, but it was the first real boundary she had ever set with them. That's when the guilt tripping started. My mom bombarded her with messages, not just once or twice, but every day, every hour. She sent long paragraphs about everything we've done for you, about how much we've sacrificed, about how Lisa was turning her back on her own family. When guilt didn't work, my dad went a different route, financial threats. He reminded Lisa that they had given her everything, the car, the tuition, the house down payment. He made it clear that if she didn't start acting like family again, she could forget about any kind of future support. Lisa didn't respond. It was the first time in her life that she wasn't running to fix things, wasn't immediately apologizing for stepping out of line, and the more she resisted, the uglier they got. She finally confided in one of our aunts, maybe looking for reassurance, maybe hoping someone would step in and fix things for her. But instead of sympathy, she got something she never expected, a brutal wake-up call. You're just their new scapegoat now that he's gone. That's when it hit her. She had spent years believing she was special, believing she was loved more. But that was never true. She was never their favorite. She was just useful. As long as she did what they wanted, they showered her with attention. The moment she stopped, she was nothing to them. Not long after that, Lisa sent me a long message. It wasn't like the other ones. No passive-aggressive comments, no pretending everything was fine. This time, she finally admitted it. I see everything now, and I'm sorry for how I treated you. I didn't respond. Then, just as Lisa was finally pulling away, my parents made their next move. She didn't hear it from them directly. She found out when a lawyer contacted her, confirming that her name had been removed from their estate plans. The message was clear. She had failed them, so she was no longer family. Instead of Lisa getting everything, they had switched their entire inheritance to a charity. It wasn't about donating money. It was punishment. A clear message. If you won't play the role we assigned you, you get nothing. Lisa lost it. She stormed over to their house, demanding an explanation. They didn't argue. They didn't even yell. They just looked at her and told her, "This is what happens when you stop being family." That was the moment Lisa knew she had never been part of a real family, just a system of control. After that, Lisa tried rallying extended family against them, thinking she could expose them, thinking people would be as outraged as she was. But it was too late. People had already seen the truth. Some had already distanced themselves. Others just didn't care anymore. Nobody was rushing to defend her. Nobody wanted to get involved. She was on her own. Then, after everything, after all the screaming, after all the manipulation, after cutting both their children off, my parents had the audacity to send me an email. "Hope you're doing well." That was it. Not an apology, not an attempt to fix anything. Just a pathetic, meaningless message, as if they were pretending none of this had ever happened. I didn't even open it. I just deleted it. A few hours later, Lisa sent me one last message. "You were right about everything." Lisa had spent her whole life believing she was untouchable in my parents' eyes. But after they cut her out of the will and told her she wasn't family anymore, she finally saw them for what they really were. She didn't try to fix things this time. She didn't beg. She just stopped responding. For the first time, Lisa went completely no contact. At first, my parents didn't take it seriously. They thought she was just being dramatic, that she'd come crawling back when she cooled off. But as the days turned into weeks, and Lisa still wasn't picking up their calls, they started panicking. They began reaching out to extended family, hoping to get someone, anyone, on their side. They called aunts, uncles, even distant cousins, trying to spin the story in their favor. But it didn't work. Most people had already distanced themselves. Others were just tired of the drama. Nobody wanted to hear their sob story. Lisa, meanwhile, wasn't done exposing them. Maybe it was out of anger, maybe she just wanted the truth to be known, but she went straight to the family group chat and laid everything out. She didn't just talk about what they had done to her, she told everyone what they had done to me too, how they had disowned me in front of the whole family, how they had treated me like an afterthought my whole life, how they had cut me off just for daring to set boundaries. This time, there was no pretending. No one could claim they didn't know. The damage was done. My parents tried to defend themselves, but an aunt shut them down immediately. "You did this to yourselves." That was the last message anyone sent them. And just like that, my parents lost whatever little support they had left. With Lisa gone, they had nobody left to manipulate except me. That's when they started calling. They left voicemail after voicemail, then came the text messages, then the emails. When I didn't respond, they took it a step further. They drove to my apartment. They knocked on my door, loud, persistent knocking that lasted for minutes. I didn't answer. Instead, I called security. They were escorted out of the building, humiliated and empty-handed. That was the last time I ever saw them in person. Not long after that, Lisa messaged me again. This time, it wasn't just an apology. She admitted everything. How she had spent years ignoring the truth. How she had convinced herself she was different. How she had let our parents turn her against me. She didn't ask for forgiveness, she just told me she understood now. For the first time, I responded, "We'll take it one step at a time." My parents, meanwhile, were beginning to feel the weight of their own choices. With neither of us supporting them, their financial situation started to crumble. They had spent years assuming their children, whether it was me or Lisa, would always be there to pick up the pieces. But now, there was no one left to foot the bill, no one left to handle their responsibilities for them. They sent Lisa one last email. It wasn't an apology, it wasn't regret, it was desperation, family duty, forgiveness, loyalty. Lisa didn't respond. And just like that, my parents had nothing. No golden child, no scapegoat, no support system, just each other. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely free. Just when I thought my parents had finally accepted reality, they made one last desperate attempt to pull me back in. It started with a sudden announcement. My dad was very sick, a serious medical condition. He needed family support now more than ever. It was an obvious trap. Lisa and I both knew exactly what they were doing. They had burned every bridge, lost every bit of control, and now that they were struggling, they were reaching for the only thing they had left, pity. Instead of playing into it, I fact-checked. I called my aunt, who still had occasional contact with them. The moment she picked up, she laughed. Dad wasn't sick. He had zero medical issues. It was a straight-up lie. Lisa was the first one to snap. She called them directly, not to comfort them, but to confront them. She didn't hold back. She threw their own words right back at them. "You cut him out of your lives and now you want him back?" They scrambled, backtracking, trying to soften what they had done. My mom, clearly panicked, tried to play it off as a misunderstanding. Lisa wasn't buying it. After that failed, they tried another angle, going after my job. They called my workplace, pretending to be concerned parents, asking if I was doing okay and whether I was under too much stress lately. It was a blatant attempt to make me look unstable, to pressure me into responding. It didn't work. My boss shut them down instantly. He let me know about the call, laughed about how ridiculous it was, and reassured me that I had nothing to worry about. At this point, it was just sad. While my parents spiraled, Lisa and I reconnected in person for the first time in years. We met for coffee. There was no awkward small talk, no pretending like everything had been fine. Lisa, without hesitation, admitted everything. She admitted how she had treated me growing up, how she had believed she was better than me, how she had ignored the signs and let herself be manipulated for years. She didn't make excuses. She didn't try to justify it. She just owned it. And for the first time, I decided to give her a real chance. It wasn't instant, but we started rebuilding, slowly, cautiously. She had a lot to make up for, and we both knew it, but for once, she was putting in the effort. Meanwhile, my parents hadn't learned a single lesson. Since their attempts to guilt-trip me had failed, they went after Lisa again. They told her she was supposed to be the good child, that she was meant to be the one who took care of them, that it was her responsibility now. Lisa didn't argue. She just blocked them completely. No calls, no emails, nothing. That was the final blow. With neither of us supporting them, their financial problems finally caught up. They had always assumed their kids, whether it was me or Lisa, would be there to bail them out when they got older. Now, with no one left to fall back on, Their money was running out. They put their house up for sale. They had no other choice. Downsizing was their only option. Then came the real desperation. They sent emails to extended family, begging for help. Nobody responded, not one person. They'd spent years thinking they were untouchable, that they could do whatever they wanted without consequences. Now, even distant relatives wanted nothing to do with them. Their reputation was completely destroyed, and for the first time, they were truly alone. I didn't feel a single ounce of sympathy. 1 year later, my parents were completely alone, and I had never been happier. Lisa and I had spent the last year slowly rebuilding a real sibling relationship. It wasn't forced, and it wasn't built on competition or guilt. For the first time, it felt genuine. No more fighting for approval, no more pretending, just two people who had survived the same nightmare, finally realizing we were on the same side. As for my parents, nobody spoke to them anymore. After their desperate attempts to guilt Lisa back failed, after extended family ignored their pleas for help, they had no choice but to accept what they had created. They weren't victims of a cruel world. They had done this to themselves. Their financial situation, which they had pretended wasn't a big deal, was worse than anyone had realized. They lost the house. There was no grand rescue, no last-minute savior, no child stepping in to save them. They had to downsize to a small apartment in an area they would have never considered living in before. Lisa and I, on the other hand, were thriving. Lisa had thrown herself into her career and was excelling in ways she never had before. Without the weight of our parents' expectations crushing her, she had freedom she had never known. And me? I got promoted. More money, more stability, and, most importantly, no drama. Meanwhile, my parents still refused to take accountability. They took to Facebook, posting vague, passive-aggressive rants about ungrateful children and how family loyalty was dying in this generation. It was obvious who they were talking about, but no one engaged. No likes, no sympathy comments, just dead air. Then came the final, pathetic attempt at a reconciliation email. It was one message, addressed to both Lisa and me, acting as if nothing had happened. No apology, no acknowledgement of their actions, just a weak invitation to talk things out. Neither of us responded. With their kids gone and their family ignoring them, they lost the last thing that had kept them relevant, their image. For years, they had thrived off of being seen as the perfect parents with the perfect family. They had used Lisa and me as props to keep that illusion alive. Now, without us, nobody cared about them anymore. Their old friends, the ones who used to admire their family life, stopped inviting them to things. Without the ability to brag about their successful children or their tight-knit family, they weren't interesting. That's when they got desperate. They started spreading lies to extended relatives, claiming that I had brainwashed Lisa, that I had poisoned her against them, that I had manipulated her into abandoning them. Nobody believed them. Lisa shut it down instantly. When a distant relative asked her why she had abandoned our parents, she didn't even hesitate. They started it. That was it, the perfect clapback. And just like that, the smear campaign fell apart. Meanwhile, Lisa and I had built a new kind of family. We reconnected with the extended relatives who actually cared about us. The ones who had cut off my parents long before we did. The ones who had seen the truth long before Lisa was ready to admit it. We made new traditions, new memories. And my parents? They sat alone in their tiny apartment, still convinced they were the victims, still refusing to admit they had done anything wrong. Their final fate? Isolation. No golden child, no scapegoat, no family to manipulate. Just two people who had spent years playing a game of control, only to end up with nothing. As for me, I deleted their numbers, and I moved on for good.